Welcome to the show in a brand new week. Ivy Nation Sports Talk up and rolling. He's Vince D'Addario. I'm Sean Stiers. How you doing today, Vince?
I'm doing fantastic. Got home about 10 minutes ago, ready to talk about anything that has nothing to do with my regular job. Would be fantastic. So apparently there's breaking news. There's all kinds of stuff going on.
I was going to say, I'm getting used to breaking news to you. I just did it again right before we went on.
Sean, I'm telling you, it's like living under a rock. As soon as I walk into the school until I leave, I get no information about anything that doesn't have to do with school. I don't get it.
You're behind all those school firewalls, apparently. Yes. Like nothing gets through at Penn High School, I guess.
Something like that. I mean, I would say breaking news from a Notre Dame standpoint is as hard to come by as lunch for me. So I don't do either one while I'm at work. Yep. So it's good.
Yep. Yeah, I mean, the news of the last hour is Drew Pyne has found a new home, and as backup says, Pyne did a beer bong and said, "Forks up, baby." He's going to Arizona State.
Woo!
So, yeah, Drew Pyne's Arizona State bound. They've got a new head coach out there. We're going to we're going to save the bulk of the conversation on that for rapid fire. That was a late entry in rapid fire today. So
yes, it was.
It'll
be interesting. I
know.
I truthfully know nothing about Arizona State other than the fact that we were getting a lot of Arizona State news last year when we were down for the Fiesta Bowl. So, when we were, I was trying to look for like sports talk radio, while we were down there, it's all Arizona State. That's as much as I know about Arizona State, other than the fact that Sparky is their mascot. I hope he does well down there. I don't really know. They got a new head coach, as you mentioned.
They do have a new head coach. A lot of coaches have tried down there, but none have stuck. It's been a revolving door, and so we'll see if Drew Pyne is the savior along with Kenny Dillingham.
See Sparky's answer.
Yep. I mean, the Jake the Snake Plumber era back in the mid-90s. You remember that?
I do.
Right at the start of your high school career-ish.
I 100% remember Jake the Snake Plumber being down at Arizona State. 100%. Yes.
Yep. That's about the most successful span I can remember for those Sun Devils. They were fun to watch. John just getting in. Drew Pyne is going to Arizona State. So, he is a Sun Devil. My friend and I, when we were in the Army, did you ever see that book? It was literally like, I'm holding my hands up for the YouTube people. It was like this thick. And it was like every college in America was in there. And they had a description of the college and, like programs offered and all this stuff. And it's like, I was always in this book when I was in the Army, because my whole thing was, I got my the college fund and all that stuff paid for going into the Army. And Arizona State was actually, my buddy and I were going to go there.
Really?
And then he decided to re-up. And that changed everything.
Punk move.
So, yeah, I know. Tell me about it, right?
That was never the plan for Sean Stiers.
No, that was not my plan. He re-upped. He actually went back to the language school, like did the advanced course or whatever, and then did he was part of the we don't need to go down that road. But so I thought about Arizona State. It looked like Arizona State for a while. It didn't happen. I ended up back in my home state with one of my other buddies instead at the University of Kansas. So I got a basketball school instead of the party school.
That you did. Rock chalk. They know their basketball. That is for sure.
They do. Yeah, they do.
Love it.
All right. Well, we've got a lot to talk about today. Signing day is just 2 days away. And again, Drew Pyne, Arizona State, we're saving that for rapid fire. We'll get into the bulk of that discussion at the start of rapid fire tonight, since that is hot off Twitter this evening. That's where I saw him announce it, and there was a Pete Themel report before that as well. So,
I get my information from the Irish Breakdown Board, Champions Lounge.
Yeah,
so it's also on there. So
I did see Brian already tweeted a short story about it as well.
Of course he did.
He's got something up, and
it's all over it. It's
Yep.
all over it.
Yep. Another big Notre Dame women's basketball win. We'll touch on
Yeah,
that
it
in rapid
was.
fire
I
as
watched
well. And
I
we'll,
watched some of that game, not as much as I wanted to. I was busy doing my Clark Griswold outside.
well,
And
you're
none
still
too
alive, so that's good. And it doesn't appear you have any broken limbs.
I do not have any broken limbs, and we got the Christmas decorations up outside 6 days before Christmas.
Yeah.
So, none too late for me.
I'm starring a couple. We'll
Yeah.
save a couple things there. Like I said, we're saving the Drew for rapid fire. But
We'll
again,
get there.
I'm glad it's. I've seen Christmas Vacation pop up more regularly this month. Like usually, it seems like it's like right around Christmas week, but it's been on the last
It
couple of weeks. I haven't watched it yet,
It's one of my
but
favorites. I needed to get a little bit more closer to Christmas myself before I throw that one in. I always watch certain movies when I do certain things around the house around Christmas. So I always watch White Christmas when I'm putting up the Christmas tree. And we haven't done that yet either. So I haven't watched that one yet. And this job is just sapping too much out of my life. I haven't had a chance to really do anything.
I was getting ready to ask you. So when are you officially on vacation this week? Are you allowed to
Friday.
say, or is that
Friday.
that's your first day?
Yeah.
Like the day before Christmas Eve is the first day you guys are on Christmas break. They don't even give anybody like travel time to go somewhere.
Which is why I'm hoping there are not going to be many people there on Wednesday and Thursday. But yes, officially, Friday is our last day. And then we don't come back until the 9th. So, like that first week of January, we're all going to be staring at each other, trying to figure out what to do. I mean, we've actually talked about maybe going someplace that week for a couple days, maybe to Chicago or, something like that, because normally you have that week before Christmas and you're running around like a chicken with your head cut off. And then you kind of have that week between Christmas and New Year's, and then you're back at school. Now you got that week in January where it's like, what do we do?
Yep.
Like, I don't know. It's going to be like, so it stinks up front, but on the tail end, I think it's going to be better.
Yep. USMA 87. Arizona State is actually a decent wrestling program. And
Oh, okay.
that was part of what sparked my interest. Not that I was like going to wrestle for them or anything, but
Sure.
they had just won a national championship. Bobby Douglas, former
Ah.
Iowa State guy, was the head coach back then, and they had won a national championship. So it's like, ooh, cool. And yeah, and they were actually the first Division I program to win a wrestling national championship without having an individual national champion.
Interesting.
So, little random fact there,
I
but
like it.
USMA 87.
I like it.
That's right. Nailed it with the wrestling trivia. So, you'll always get me going when you throw in. We need to do this summer maybe. We need to do the Vision Quest.
Oh, you're right.
Like we need maybe this summer, like once a week, we can do a sports movie. Like
Yeah, I
Bobby and
like
I
that idea.
used to do. Now
I
you said you've never seen Vision Quest still, right?
never seen it.
Okay.
And
I've got the DVD, so I can let you borrow it. And
Modine, I'm a big fan
yeah,
of his from some other things that he's done, so
yep,
I'm all
Memphis
about it.
Belle. Yeah,
Yeah. Yep,
yep.
yep.
All
He
right.
was
Well,
in,
let's get.
Full Metal Jacket, right? That's,
Yeah, he was Full
that's
Metal
Joker,
Jacket. Yep,
right? So, yeah, okay.
he was. You're right. Let's get going on our topic du jour.
Yes.
By the way, hit the like button if you would. Plenty of people in here already. Jason Smith, great movie. You're absolutely right about that. Hit the like button, though, if you would. Much appreciated. Subscribe, rate, review, and all that good stuff as well. So, signing day's 2 days away. And, with the Peyton Bowen stuff going on, and you can throw Jaden Lamar in there as well. Obviously, NIL has been a big game changer for Marcus Freeman.
No
The best
doubt.
laid plans of mice and
Mhm.
men and all that. It's like, Marcus Freeman had a plan. He had all these big time recruits, and as of now, they're still officially committed, but are they going to stay committed? And, I think we know, even though we don't know officially, that NIL has played a big part in this, the upfront uploading of NIL. So I guess the question today is, can Notre Dame realistically compete for these recruits, to stay on the national stage, to realistically be national championship contenders in this world of NIL that's barely more than a year old at this point?
It's a loaded question,
It is.
obviously. And I think, to be honest, I think we're going to be speculating as to what we think can be the answer to this. And I think the true answer is years, away, right? Because I would like to say I would have loved to see Marcus Freeman as head coach at Notre Dame before NIL, because I think he would just
I think a lot of
rack
people would say that. Yeah.
up the high recruiting classes, right? I just think he'd be unbelievable. And I think that, we're gonna lose guys due to NIL. And I think some of the early returns that we have gotten from some schools that are just, writing blank checks to guys have shown us that it doesn't work when you do that. When that's your recruiting strategy, that it just doesn't work. I think part of that, you could look at Texas A&M. Obviously, I think they're leading, Division I schools and guys that are in the transfer portal. Last time I checked, maybe that's changed, but it's up there. I mean, it's a very large number, and they have garnered their last recruiting classes using NIL money. And I just feel like if you're not establishing relationships with kids, if you're not being honest with them up front, if you're just trying to get them in your class by giving them a bunch of money, that's not sustainable. I just
Right.
don't see that being sustainable. Now, USC
Well,
would be an argument to the other side of things, that you can turn a program around instantaneously by using the transfer portal and NIL. And USC did that. Now, they didn't make it to the Final Four, but they were one game away from it, right? I mean, they no one's going to sit here and say that they didn't turn their season around, right? So it can be done a lot easier using NIL and using the
absolutely.
transfer portal. You can turn a program around instantly.
It's troublesome because, I mean, it's obviously troublesome. Everyone knows that. I mean, that's why everyone's been freaking out for the last week or week and a half or whatever. It seems all these things, whenever these incidents come up, it always seems like it's twice as long that we've been talking about it as we actually have.
Yeah, I know,
Like
right?
that 5 days between Brian Kelly going to LSU and Marcus Freeman being named head coach, that seemed like it was 3 weeks to a month.
Yes, it did.
Just and I can only imagine here when you guys were doing this show on a daily basis. I mean, I was doing the radio show, but we didn't have the same kind of up close interaction with the viewers and listeners like you guys had. I can only imagine what it was. And the boards, I'm sure, were going
Yeah.
crazy and everything else. But like with this stuff going on right now, and then you see that they get the commitment for the 2024 class, which is great, but it's a year away.
Right.
A lot can happen in a year, and it's
Yeah.
hard to get excited about a 2024 kid when you've got this kind of thing going on right now. There's just so much instability in the whole process, and that's what's worrying. And like I've seen people say, well, you need to push you need to get rid of this early signing period or push it back into January or into February. And Brian and I were talking last week. I don't think you need to push it back. I do still think there needs to be an early signing period, but why don't you have like a 1 week window right at the end of July or the first week of August,
Yeah.
right before training camp starts?
Yeah.
That's your early period. And then you go from there to February, like the old period.
Yeah.
Like keeping it right here, part of this, because you've got the early signing period now, you've got coaches, you've got the coaching carousel going on, you've got the
Still
transfer
going.
portal
Yeah.
going on, you've got all these things going on, and part of what speeds up the process on a lot of these decisions is the fact that you do have new head coaches, whether it's Kenny Dillingham or like all these guys, they want to jump in, they want to make sure that they nail down whatever recruits they can that the old coach had, as well as jump into that transfer portal and trying to bring, just look at Deion Sanders as a prime example. First thing he did, what did he do? Use some NIL to make a splash to get Dylan Edwards.
Sure.
And I think if you took this early period out, put it before the season, even if you're only able to get maybe 75, 65, 75% of your commits to sign before the season starts, but that just The guys who are definite on what they want to do, you've got them right away. And then you get to December, you don't have the early signing period in December, and then you can focus on, it's mostly about the transfer portal type
Sure.
guys. And then you've got a handful of guys left over who are going to sign in February. I think that makes the most sense to me.
I have always advocated for an early signing period being before the season starts. And I think that mine did that earlier too. It's really weird. I think that a lot of that for me,
It's really scary because you know that your wrist is listening to
I
you,
know
right?
it's there. Yeah, you're not wrong about that. Uh, I look at it more from the recruit standpoint. If I'm a high level recruit or I'm a recruit, period, I want to put this whole recruiting thing to bed before my senior year, as far as being a football player. I would love that if I was being recruited or if my son is being recruited. I don't want the whole recruitment thing hanging over his head throughout his senior season. I would love, and you could say that because he's committed, you don't have to worry about it anymore. But if you're a high level recruit, you're still getting calls from all these different schools throughout your senior year because you haven't signed anything yet. And so everybody's still fair game. Look at Peyton Bowen, for example, right? So I would love there to be a signing period before the season. That way you can sign it. You can, sign, seal, delivered. You know that you are going into your senior season of high school football with that decision behind you. You don't have to worry about it. You're good to go. I would love for that to be the case. And I
Yeah,
agree with you. Now that you've got the transfer portal as well, that allows coaches to just focus on the transfer portal in the December period.
right.
The part after the regular season, in between the bowl games, during the bowl games, all of that, because that's a whole new thing that you weren't really dealing with before. Yes, the transfer portal existed, but not like it is now. There wasn't instantaneous. You couldn't play right away, instantaneous eligibility, that sort of thing. So the transfer portal has upped its game big time, and you need to be able to focus on that if that's how you are going to build your team, or if you're going to plug holes that way or whatever. So yeah, I like having this time to focus on the transfer portal, and then you've got the signing period in February, just like it's always been. So I would advocate for July and February to be my two signing periods. Absolutely.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. In the meantime, again, like as we apply this specifically to Notre Dame, okay, if they're going to lose out essentially on the most elite of
Mm-hmm.
their recruits, because it's what, 3 5 stars now that they've lost out on altogether, not necessarily all in this
Sure.
window, but you've got Keeley, you've got Moore, and now well, they've definitely lost out on 2, potentially Bowen. We still don't know for sure. We're
We
going to
don't
find
know. We
out
won't
for
know till
sure
Wednesday,
in a
probably.
couple of days. So if you're Notre Dame, again, like to be able to realistically say you're going to compete for national championships, as we've said, this is still a really good class, but you're losing out on the upper 1% of this class. The guys, you've been to the playoff already a couple of times. These are the kind of difference makers that you need to push you over the limit. When you talk about gap closers and all that stuff. So how do they need to approach recruiting, do you think, again, in this world that we're in right now?
From a Notre Dame standpoint,
Yes.
is that what you're referring to?
Yes.
Okay. Just want to make sure I go down the right rabbit hole here.
Yeah.
So, from a Marcus Freeman, from a Notre Dame standpoint, I still think you sell Notre Dame the way they've always sold Notre Dame, but you have to have a caveat in there as well. You have to have another argument showing, hey, you know, Michael Mayer was able to do this. Isaiah Foskey was able to do this. These are the things that you can do when you become successful at the University of Notre Dame. And you have to have that conversation. You have to tell them, look, we're not going to write a blank check to you. That is not how this is going to work. And if that's what you're looking for, we love you, but this isn't the place for you. And I think you have to have those open and honest conversations with kids. And if the kid is just looking for a bag of money, then he's not going to work at Notre Dame anyway. He's just not. And
No, I know, but that still doesn't get you national championships if you're losing
But
out on
there's
those
plenty of
guys
kids you can
consistently.
get that are going to get you a national championship, because I don't think that those kids are going to stick at the schools that they go to anyway. I think they're going to start bouncing all around because they're not going to like some sort of promise isn't going to be able to be kept, whether it's a financial one, whether it's a playing time one, whether it's an injury situation. I just don't think that the answer is throwing a bunch of money at these kids. I don't think it is. And it's also, honestly, the whole money situation and the NIL situation, it's going to spread these 5-star money grabbers out. They're not all going to Alabama. They're not all going to go to Georgia.
Which is actually good for college football
Right.
as a whole.
Exactly. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
So I don't.
Might not be good for, for Notre Dame in the short term.
Right.
But yeah, like, okay, Dion, you can get your Dylan, he's not a 5-star obviously, but he's still, he's
the highest ranked Colorado kid that they've had in forever.
Exactly. Yeah.
So,
but like Dion had, the kid that he recruited away from Florida State last year down at Jackson State, and Jackson State had a really good team, but they don't compete at the FBS level, and so, and they didn't even win their Celebration Bowl as it turned out. They got beat in that game. But I guess my point is, like, you get one or two guys, or what, I think Colorado's going to be a better program under Deion Sanders, but for right now,
agree.
One or two of those guys.
But what
isn't
program?
Make a heck of a lot of difference.
Like, is it going to be a program, or is it going to be,
a mercenary unit?
Yeah, exactly. That's not how I would build my college football team. And I'm telling you, there's plenty of guys out there. There's plenty of 5-star guys out there, 5-star, high 4-star, whatever you want to say, that are willing to come to school for the right reasons and that have the bigger picture that they can make money down the line, and it doesn't have to be upfront money.
Well, and look, the vast majority, assuming that all these other guys are going to commit, and they've got kids obviously already lined up for next year. Again, you've got to get to next year for that to matter. But the vast majority are sticking. The vast majority of this class is sticking together.
Correct.
And there is a lot of talent in this class. And I realize, that's hard for a lot of people to still kind of ingest and sort of get behind, again, when you're losing, those big time guys at the top of the class. But I think if you have classes like just this class right here, which is still going to be around, top 5, top 7, whatever it ends up being by the time it's all said and done, depending on whatever movement you have, it's still going to be a top 5 class right around there in the nation.
Top 5, I think, is what I can gather. Yeah.
Yeah. And I agree with everything you're saying about the message and the relationships and, just the whole thing that these guys are buying into more than just, something short-term gratification, that they do still have to keep their big picture in mind. I think you can compete with, Notre Dame was already in a position where they could get to the college football playoff a couple of times. And with the field expanding to 12, they're going to have more opportunities to get in that playoff field. I think that you keep, you keep getting these kind of guys. And as you and I have talked about before, the biggest thing, now there's some, there's some skill position type stuff. We've already started to see an increase in that level of talent, both offensively and defensively. You just have to keep going after the elite quarterbacks.
Yeah.
You get the elite quarterback, like we've talked about, using Clemson as the example, getting Deshaun Watson and Trevor Lawrence, that was the difference for them. Now, they had a lot of other NFL talent, obviously, but those guys were the difference in being just a playoff team and a national championship team. They've got to keep going consistently. They can't settle. They've got to go consistently after these high-end guys, get them to compete for jobs. Now, you're going to lose out on some of them too, because, just like with Dante Moore, NIL is going to be an influence there. But especially the quarterbacks, I think it seems like, like they kind of get it, right?
Yeah.
Like the long-term aspect of the thing.
Well, and how many times have we said that Notre Dame is a quarterback away? Look, for all of the NIL money that's out there and all the guys that are taking the bags and all of the whatever, however you want to say it, right? Notre Dame's classes are going to be really, really good, and they're still a quarterback away. You can get all these great guys offensively, defensively, defensive line, offensive line, all these different guys. And I'm telling you right now, if you had an elite quarterback, you're good to go. You're good to go.
Right.
And the elite quarterback, there's elite quarterbacks out there. And frankly, I don't even think Notre Dame needs an elite quarterback. They need a really good quarterback, and they're
Yeah.
going to be just fine, and they're going to compete for a national championship, and they can win a national championship with the classes that they're bringing in. Absolutely. Now, is that elite / very good quarterback on the roster now? Is he going to be on the
Well,
roster as a commitment? We don't know that. We think maybe, but that's what they are. They're one position away, in my opinion.
the other part of this is they have to figure out how they can be more active in the transfer portal. The grad transfers can augment you and you can get some of those guys, but
Sure.
there's a reason they're grad transfers. They get to that level because they're not, but you can still with the experience you can get, like even if it's a MAC level receiver, defensive line,
Sure.
look at Chris Smith, and he came in from Harvard and gave him some quality playing time this year.
There's a really good receiver at Kent State, I believe, that
Exactly.
all the big programs are after.
Right. Right. And now NIL can influence those guys as well. But my point is they need to be able to get like just look at the situation they're in right now. They have obvious need at wide receiver. To be able to get a receiver like a Ben Skoranek from a couple of years ago with some experience that they can bring in, add him right to the mix. They can't hamstring themselves both with what they're willing or not willing to do as far as NIL, as well as like the undergrad transfers. And Marcus Freeman basically, without going into extreme detail, he basically said last week nothing has changed with the undergrad
Right.
transfers.
And I don't think it's going to change.
Yeah.
And that's reality, to be honest with you. And I would say, that I'm okay with that there's a standard to get into Notre Dame. And I'm okay with that. It's one of the reasons I root for Notre Dame. It's not just
Sure.
because it happens to be in my backyard. It's one of the reasons I root for them, because that degree means something and it's important. And to be honest with you, even I don't like saying Michigan. I don't like them at all, but they have the same thing. They don't let in a lot of undergrad transfers because of the same thing that happens at Notre Dame. It's that those classes don't transfer and they're not going to bring somebody in who's not on track to graduate.
Yeah.
And I respect that about the institution of the University of Michigan, right? So I'm okay with that. I really am. But you have to be able to recruit other ways to supplement that. You have to. You have to be better at bringing in the grad transfers. You got to be better at bringing in kids from an undergrad situation from high school. You have to, because you can't count on the transfers that haven't graduated yet.
Right. No, that's exactly right. And they've got to find, again, the high end transfer type guys, they're going to command some NIL of their own, and that's probably what's holding up some of these transfers. Like you hear about the kid from Coastal. He was going to visit Auburn, and then he wasn't going to visit Auburn. It's like you got to know that there are other things at play. That's like all of a sudden holding some of these things up. But I think that they can definitely augment their roster in some different spots by going out there and being as aggressive as possible with what they can do
Right.
in the transfer market, and they can help themselves. Again, you don't want to have to rely on that all the time, but you're always going to the cycle is always going to catch up at some point. Just like right
Absolutely.
now with the wide receivers, the cycle is always going to catch up, and you're going to need to go out and augment, and
Yeah.
you need to be able to do that to supplement yourself. And I think that can really help them as well. Again, even if it's not like the most coveted of the wide receivers, you can still get yourself a really experienced,
Sure.
pretty good wide receiver who can jump in and help you for a year out of the grad transfer market.
100%. And if you keep bringing in talent from the high school level, right, then it's a supplemental situation, just like you
Right.
said. You don't need to bring in somebody that's going to be a starter and a star. That's not what you're looking for. That I would hope that that's never going to be the situation for Notre Dame at any position. And I know people would argue with me and say that that's the situation right now at quarterback, and that's fine. You are entitled to that argument. That's great, but I don't see that being the situation really at any other position. And as long as they keep racking up top 5 classes coming in from high school, They shouldn't have to. Now, it's still going to be the transfer portal and NIL and all that. There's still going to be massive movement out of Notre Dame at some point if kids not getting what they want. I get that. If you'd have told me that the Notre Dame starting quarterback was going to leave before the bowl game at some point in my lifetime, I'd have told you were crazy. You know what I mean? Because that's just not – but that's something we're going to have to get used to.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, those kinds of things is the way that things are trending in college football. But I do think that Marcus Freeman and the coaching staff and Notre Dame have a good, solid plan as long as they can continue to execute it. If either one starts to drag, if they're not as good with kids coming out of high school, and if they're not as good bringing in grad transfers, then that's going to be a major problem because they can't supplement with undergrad transfers. They're never going to be able to. So those other two things still have to be at a high level. Like they brought in, they're bringing in a punter from the Ivy League again. You know what I mean? That apparently that's a pathway that they're going to use on a regular basis at this point.
But I don't mind that.
I don't either. I think that's fine.
Especially for those positions like punter and kicker. I think
translates.
I think you're better off maybe in the long run, like sticking with that route, like you bring in one of those guys, every 2 to 3 years and you just keep going out and, like as those guys develop, you get to look at them on a daily basis.
Yeah.
In your training camp and in practice and in the spring, if you think that they can cut it, well, then this year we don't go out and get a kicker or a punter or whatever, but if they're, even a little bit shaky, they're not kicking the distance that you want. They're not as accurate as you want, whatever it happens to be. Go out and get you an experienced kicker. There are a million of those guys, when you think about how few NFL teams there are and how few pro opportunities there are a million guys who've got college kicking experience who can help you out right away.
Yep.
I don't mind that at all.
No question at all. Now, being the father of a kicker, I hope that that's not the case all around. But at the same time, I totally understand it. And kicking and punting translates no matter what level you're on. You could be NAIA, you could be Division II, Division I, doesn't matter. Either you can kick the ball or you can't. Doesn't matter the competition. You're competing against the uprights in the wind. Like that translates very easily. So I can watch the film and see if a kid's a good punter or a good kicker, and you can bring them in. I have no problem with that. I think that's actually really good. I'm not sure what that says about the kickers and punters that are currently on Notre Dame's roster since they keep going out and getting grad transfers, but hey, that's fine.
Yeah, we've had a couple comments about USC, like Michael saying USC will be in the spotlight for 2 to 3 years until the transfer guys leave. 20 transfers does not make good roster development for other players. I mean, he had to do basically the same thing that Brian Kelly had to do. They had bad rosters. They had holes to fill. And obviously, it helps when you leave one school and you can bring a really good quarterback along with you who already knows the system, who can jump right in. And then, you can go get the Blitnikoff winner from a year ago. Yeah. NIL. But still, Lincoln Riley's thing long-term, I don't think he wants to have to rely as heavily on the transfer portal year in and year out. He wants to be able to go out and recruit as well. But for right now, that's what he had to do. And they were successful.
And it's going to be interesting because I think you can go out and you can put together a team, obviously, using the transfer portal and using NIL, just as USC did. Is that sustainable? Could you just do that every year? Maybe. You're going to see some serious ebbs and flows, I would imagine, at that point. But it's a big question. Is it sustainable? Because I guarantee you there's going to be coaches out there that are like, hey, we're just going to use the transfer portal every year. Screw recruiting. We'll bring in 10, 15 guys, whatever, doesn't matter. And they're all 1-year contracts anyway.
Yeah.
And so we'll just use the transfer portal, and that's how we're going to be successful. There's going to be coaches out there that are going to go down that road. I'm interested to see if it's sustainable.
Again, we're going to talk about Drew Pyne and going to Arizona State off the top at rapid fire, but apparently he's one of 26 guys that have already, that they're bringing into Arizona State. And, like you look at the difference between Notre Dame and Arizona State in academic standards, that is a place that you would completely expect them, go out, raid the transfer portal, the academic standards, you don't have to worry about. Apologies to the two Arizona State alums who I saw in the chat
Yeah,
earlier, but
sure.
like I said, I was thinking about going there myself, and it wasn't, necessarily hard. It's a lot easier at a state school like that than it is at any private school.
For
So,
sure. Absolutely. And those are just facts. That's not an
yeah,
opinion. I mean,
yeah.
those are facts and it is what it is.
Couple comments from the chat here. Jacob, do you see changes coming to NIL to get this under control? And when would you
Mhm.
anticipate that happening? Maybe with the new president coming in. And someone else had a question similar to that as well. If the new president might change things.
I mean, would he want to? Do you want that to be your legacy, trying to change a corrupt system that your company, your establishment put into motion in the first place? I mean, should there be? Yes. Will there be? I'm not sold. I just don't. It's kind of like the toothpaste is out of the tube at this point, and how are you going to regulate every one of these schools and how they are putting forth their NIL money and what does it look like? Is it
Well,
legit?
and look,
It's gonna be tough.
everyone got worked up about the whole sneaker, Adidas, all
With
that stuff
basketball,
with
yeah.
with basketball a couple of years ago, but that is nothing compared to
No.
what's going on right now. It's like none of that should even matter when you look at the kind of things that are going on right now. And like look at the Jordan Addison to USC thing. The
Yep.
reports were coming out, and the calls had already been made from Pat Narduzzi to Lincoln Riley going, hey, what's going on here? When the kid was not even in the transfer portal yet.
Correct.
It was completely illegal for anyone to have any contact with him from another school. But all this stuff is out in the media. Narduzzi is calling him going, what's going on? And then the next thing you know, within a week after all these reports came out, oh, by the way, he enters the transfer portal
And
and there he goes to
automatically
USC.
is at USC.
Yeah.
Agreed. It's messed up. And there's nothing to stop these kids. Like, that's collusion. That's the definition of collusion. You're not supposed to be able to contact kids, but there's always a way. That's why everybody okay, I'm going to turn this around to a Notre Dame thing. Everybody's like, well, Drew Pyne had to hit the transfer portal when he did in order to keep his options open and to make himself more apt. If people wanted to know if Drew Pyne was available and he wanted to let people know he was available, it was going to happen whether he said he was going to transfer or not. And that is a prime example. The Jordan Addison thing is a prime example of that fact. If Drew Pyne wanted to transfer and he knew he was going to transfer after the bowl game,
Yeah.
he could have easily had his people talk to people.
Right.
No problem. Zero problem.
And the
Then said,
portal
hey,
stays open until the middle of January
yes,
as well.
no problem at all. So
It's
that is where I was coming from with the decision of Drew Pyne to transfer to announce that he was going to transfer when he did. It was a heat of the moment decision by him. Maybe you could say it worked out for him because he ended up at Arizona State, but I guarantee you he would have still ended up at Arizona State if he would have waited till after the bowl game, if that's where he wanted to go. You know what I mean? So
right.
there's always a way to contact people. It's just this NIL and the transfer portal stuff just makes it even more obvious.
I completely agree. I'm looking at some more comments related to the NIL stuff, and there was a Dante Moore comment. There it is.
There was
Right
one.
there. Thoughts on Dante flipping to UCLA? Also, do you think it's a good thing Bowen has yet to commit, or are you expecting him to do so publicly on signing day?
So, thoughts on Dante flipping to UCLA? If you followed anything that had to do with Dante and Notre Dame to Oregon, he went for the money, and that makes perfect sense as to why he went to Oregon. And if anybody thinks he didn't get more money going to UCLA, they're nuts. And
Yeah.
he said in an article that I read that a lot of it had to do with Dillingham going to Arizona State. Well, if that was the case, how come you didn't
Why didn't you go to Arizona State?
Because clearly they were looking for a quarterback.
Yeah.
So why didn't you go there? Oh, because Arizona State probably wasn't going to offer the kind of money that UCLA and Oregon were offering. Okay, just be honest about it.
Yeah.
That's the other thing. I just wish these recruits and these parents and just be honest. Hey, I'm looking for the biggest payday. So who's going to give it to me? Just be honest about it. So I'm not surprised that Dante flipped. I wouldn't be surprised if he transfers out of UCLA at some point as well. That just wouldn't surprise me in any way.
Well, there's still a couple days to go. Someone else might come up and up
Give him
the
more.
ante.
He's a 5-star quarterback.
That's right.
Who knows what the going rate is for a 5-star quarterback who's definitely willing to go wherever the money takes him. So the next part of the question: do you think that Bowen has yet to commit, or are you expecting him to stay? I don't know. I don't think I'm going to hear anything about Peyton Bowen until Wednesday, if I'm being honest. And we'll all
I think
kind of
that's
find
when
out
we're going to
together.
find out. We're all going to find out together on
Yep.
Wednesday what exactly he's doing.
Absolutely.
That's what I think it's going to come down to. And then,
Yep.
there'll be a live show going on right here.
There's going to be all kinds of fun and
Yeah.
exciting stuff going on at Irish Breakdown on Wednesday. I'm not exactly sure what all the plans are because, I crawl under that rock during the day. So, but I know that this is going to be your place right here for recruiting on Wednesday. So make sure you tune in.
And this is really nothing new either. I mean, SMU obviously got the death penalty at one point for it was booster money and all that kind of stuff. But I mean, Cam Newton going to Auburn, there was a huge bag of money involved there, or bags of money, or whatever. And like David said, keep in mind, it's just as much the parents wanting the money
I get it.
as the players. I mean, they obviously they do absolutely play a big part in it as well.
Look, again, I'll use my kid as an example. It's not like he's getting recruited, but if he was, he's only a sophomore, but if he was getting recruited, you're darn right I'm going to have a say in where he goes to school. He and I are going to have that discussion. I would also like to think that he's going to have the final say as to where he goes, but we'll see. You went through the recruiting process with Jesse when he picked a school and all of that. Obviously, he wasn't being handed NIL money. It was before NIL existed, but that I'm sure, without ever having discussed this with you, I'm sure it was a family decision where he ended up going. So it's going to be a family decision. Now, it's a problem that all of these family members, and they're not all family members, are in a recruit's ear telling them to go for the money and doing all, because they're all got their hand out. That's the problem. And that's been the case since time began, right? There's always extra parties with their hand out wanting to take advantage of a talented kid, right? That's always been the case. So that's never going to stop. It's just up to the recruit and the recruit's immediate family to not allow that to happen. And that's that. I guarantee you that my kid's not going for the biggest bag of money. Okay. But at the same time, it's going to be an influence. It's going to be involved. My kid's going to talk to me about where he went. Again, I'm sure that you and Jesse had a discussion about where he was going to go to school, and it was a family decision.
Well, I'll just say there were two other options he and his mom both thought were better, in terms of what he was going to do with his major, but we let him make his own decision.
Yeah.
So,
there you go.
yes.
And that's fair. I mean, again,
we gave our input as much
right.
as we could, but we let him make his own decision in the end.
Right. And you know what? At the end of the day, he's an engineer and he's doing his thing, and
right.
he's a happy guy. So,
right.
I don't know. There's never a right answer. And we would all love to be in the shoes of different people. I have never been in the shoes where my kid was offered $2 million.
Nope, me either.
I mean, that's a lot of money, man.
Yep.
That is a lot of money. Okay?
Tons of cash. Tons of cash.
Yeah.
Yeah. And someone was saying that, ESPN Plus has Peyton Bowen apparently still sticking with Notre Dame. We'll see.
Okay.
It's like it's like they might say that, but there are others who obviously have him flipping. Steve Wiltfong is one of them. And, we'll see, again, it's going to come down to, we'll find out Wednesday morning, fairly early, I think.
Yes, we will.
Do they still fax in, like the NILs and stuff
email.
like that?
I think it's email now.
I remember it hasn't been that long ago. It's like
No.
they're faxing them in. They're waiting on the faxes to come in.
And I think they probably still call them that, but I believe it's an email these days, but I'm not 100% sure on that. So, yeah.
That's right, Milton. Smash the like button. Do it.
Smash it, baby.
Do it now. Let me see. Well, the next biggest topic that we've got is right at the start of rapid fire.
Let's do it, baby.
So are you ready?
Is it time?
Let's
I
go.
never know. I know we're
Let's
getting
go.
into the green area, so let's go, baby.
You've
Rapid
never been in
fire.
the green area.
Let's go.
It's funny because Tom Noy last week, when I had Tom on the show, Tom was the first co-host type person to resist the transition to
What?
rapid fire. Yeah, he wanted to keep just talking basketball. And I'm like, come on, Tom, we can talk. Still going to get some basketball topics in here.
Oh, that's great.
So Drew Pyne announced today he's transferring to Arizona State. He's going to play for new head coach Kenny Dillingham, former Oregon offensive coordinator. So here are a couple things Pete Themmel from ESPN.com had to say about Pyne going to ASU. Pyne felt the momentum building within the program. The addition of Pyne marks the 26th new recruiter transfer brought in since Dillingham's hire in late November. Pyne left Tempe wanting to be part of that program's building something, while ASU needed to reload on the offensive line. It's arguable that none of the individual commitments were bigger than Pyne. So part one, Drew Pyne, big commit for the Arizona State
Good for
program.
him.
Part two, Pyne impressed the Arizona State staff with his productivity in a pro-style system that's generally conservative and lacked dynamic weapons. As tight end Michael Mayer was Notre Dame's top pass game threat. Pyne showed toughness in both his ability to create plays and take hits. While Pyne isn't physically imposing at 6 foot, 205 pounds, he showed the ability to stay healthy and absorb hits without getting injured. Also took care of the ball, showed quick twitch on his throws, and the ability to deliver from different platforms. Go, Vince.
Okay, the first part about him being the top recruit or whatever to go to Arizona State, I say good for Drew Pyne. The reason he left is he wants to be the man. And going to Arizona State, apparently they're promising that he's going to be the man. So awesome. I'm glad for him that he gets to be the man. That's what he wanted. He wanted some love. He's going to get the love down in Arizona State. So that's awesome. Good for him. As far as the
hold it. Let me just kind of
go ahead
on that. Boston College was, they thought they had the next Joe Montana when they got Phil Jurkovec a couple of years ago, right? And like looking at, like Arizona State needs to build it, like rebuild its offensive line. They're kind of saying there, 6 foot, 205 pounds. Drew Pyne did not have to take that many hits.
Correct.
Like when he talks about these hits and absorb the hits and all this kind of stuff, he had a really good offensive line in front of him.
Yes.
And now, Phil Jurkovec found out what it was like to play behind a bad offensive line. And I hope for Drew Pyne's sake that he doesn't have to go through that same thing at Arizona State.
Look, it's a complete rebuild at Arizona State.
Yeah.
If he thinks he's going to go there and play behind a line like he had at Notre Dame, I got to think that Drew Pyne's not that dumb. Just put it real plainly. I got to think that he realizes it's not going to be the same. And if he doesn't, then that's a major, major problem. So I'm glad that he's going to be the man. If he thinks he's going to be the man, he's going to have 3 years of eligibility left. So he's going to have time to, build something up at Arizona State. So that's great. All the things that Themmel said about him being at Notre Dame. I mean, I guess you could extrapolate some of what you watched and say those things, but that's not what I would say about Drew Pyne. I just wouldn't. I mean, can he throw off platform? Sure. Does he have a quick trigger? A couple times? Sure. Can he take hits? Yeah, he's taken some hits. Okay, fine, but he didn't take that many. What were the other things that he said about him? What am I missing?
Ability to stay healthy, absorb hits without getting injured, took care of the ball, showed quick twitch on his throws, ability to deliver off different platforms.
All those things are true. Nothing about decision-making in there.
See, that's the, he blamed whatever limitations Drew Pyne appears to have right now on the conservative nature of the offense. Now, was the offense relatively conservative? Sure, they ran the ball a lot. Could you argue that it was in part, and I'm not using this as an excuse for Tommy Rees, but again, this was the backup quarterback coming into the season. Could you argue that it was conservative in part to protect a quarterback who was a liability in different areas?
First of all, absolutely. First of all, no question about it. But there were also, talking about not having playmakers and all these different things. There were plenty of times where his playmakers were wide open and throwing the ball. Okay. So that's part of it too, where he was force feeding it into Michael Mayer, who, because Michael Mayer is as good as he is, should be the Mackey Award winner, was able to make plays, right? So you can't say that he's the only playmaker he had. You were force feeding the ball to him when you had guys he was triple covered, sometimes quadruple covered,
right,
and you're still trying to fit the ball into him. Simple math, somebody else is wide open. And a lot of times
Braden Lindsey would like a word right now.
Yeah,
Braden's not going to call his quarterback out in public, but Braden Lindsey would like a word,
Yes, absolutely.
That guy should have had double the production that he had.
At least.
And that fan in the stands who got that, what should have been an easy touchdown pass against Stanford, walked out of there. I think the net might have actually kept it out, but you know what I'm saying. It's
I 100% know what you're saying.
Come on.
Yes. So, I feel like Pete Thamel kind of cherry picked some of the things that Drew Pyne does well and left it at that. There was no true criticism there. And maybe that's not what the point of the article was.
He's a good kid, hard worker, all that kind of stuff. I still don't like the way, as you said, the way he left the team.
Right.
There are liabilities with this kid. And I feel like because of the one-loss record that he had, it does, especially now when you're looking back on the season and all you're going to do is look at a stat line, and a stat line, you don't see the things you're talking about, like receivers he should have thrown to when he chose to throw to a double-covered Michael Mayer, or when he overthrows an easy post for an easy surefire touchdown to Braden Lindsey, or, again, other times where he doesn't throw to a wide open Braden Lindsey or whoever it happens to be, or he throws the ball in the ground at the feet of these guys and, or overthrows some of these guys. There were a lot of that. Now, do other quarterbacks do that? Sure they do. But I guess my point is, the fact that he has an 8-2 record and he did it for Notre Dame,
right,
kind of elevates his status
Absolutely.
in this whole thing.
100%.
It makes him a prize for somebody else to get now. At this
No
point.
doubt. No doubt. And Wayne Miller says is not throwing deep a quarterback thing or a Notre Dame thing. Book wouldn't throw deep either. Well, it can't be a Notre Dame thing if there's plays called where guys are running wide open deep. So process of elimination for me says it's a quarterback thing. Now, you could say it's a development thing. Okay, I'm not going to argue with you on that front. And so if you want to say that a development thing is a Notre Dame thing, it's a cyclical argument, I guess. But Tommy Rees isn't calling plays where there's guys running wide open deep that aren't being thrown to if it's a Notre Dame thing. That's my take on this. I don't know if you have an opinion on that.
No, I mean, Tommy, I don't think those guys threw deep. Can you argue that some of it is a Notre Dame thing? Because, Rees was obviously here connected to Brian Kelly. So much of that connection was about don't make mistakes,
Sure.
like make the layups, that
Right.
kind of thing. But at the same time, there were times they tried to throw deep. They didn't necessarily connect on them. They were just off on a couple. I still think it's more about the guy just not making reads that he should have made. And I think there was some of that with Ian Book as well.
For sure. Absolutely. Yep. So I think it's more of a quarterback thing.
Yeah.
But again, you could say development, and that's fine. Again, I'm not going to argue with you on that, but I just wanted to bring that one up.
Oh. Glad you did. Matt says, I think Notre Dame is going to regret letting Drew transfer. It was his first year as a starter. I thought he did amazing. Arizona State getting a steal. He is going to thrive there. Maybe he will. And that's, this will kind of be a test. Again, he's not going to have as good an offensive line, but he's going to go play for a coach with a more open system than he's played for here. Again, like how much of what he played with here was due to himself, again, and whatever liabilities that he had. How much were they, trying to kind of cover some of that stuff?
Sure.
Regret letting him transfer. I guess the problem I have with that is they didn't want him to transfer. They wanted him to stay
Yeah.
and compete for the job.
Yes.
He didn't want to compete for the job, knowing that they were going to bring in a transfer quarterback.
Correct.
So it's not that they let him transfer, it's that he bolted right away.
Yes,
He
that is.
found out.
They wanted to keep him, and are they going to regret it from a depth standpoint? Maybe. And I could make that argument. I have no problem with that. I anticipated that Drew was going to transfer after the bowl game. I did. I anticipated that because if you bring in a transfer quarterback, you've got Tyler Buckner competing for it. That's two guys right there who I think would be better than Drew Pyne to begin with. Because guess what? It wasn't a competition in the preseason. Yes, it was a competition. It was over pretty fast. Okay. Tyler Buckner is a better quarterback than Drew Pyne. It just is.
Mhm.
And I'm sorry that people don't think that, and that's fine. You're entitled to your opinion, but that is not what I saw on a daily basis when we were there at practice.
Yeah.
And so he didn't want to compete for it. He wanted to be named the starter. Okay. Then you have to go, and that's fine. That's what
It's
have.
one thing if he played perfect. He was a 75% passer all along, and he
Right.
didn't do some of these things that we're pointing out that were easy throws that should have been made.
I mean, he didn't
And
play
like,
amazing. I mean,
yeah,
I don't want to disagree with Matt. I'm mad. I'm not. This isn't
he
an
played
attack
he
on
played
you.
well, but he leaned on, and the staff leaned on a really good offensive line that it
Right.
turned out to be that wasn't playing that way when Buckner was there, as well as that running game that averaged
Yes.
over 200 yards for a good chunk of the
Absolutely.
season.
And look, I think that Drew Pyne is a decent quarterback. He's a good backup quarterback. When he was recruited at Notre Dame, I didn't think that he would ever really be a legitimate starter at Notre Dame. He was because of injury, but that's what a backup quarterback does. I thought he did his job. He did his job. He was a backup quarterback. He got him to 8-2 when he started. Hey, I appreciate Drew Pyne and what he was able to do at Notre Dame. There's no doubt about it. But I don't regret him leaving from I think he compete and be the starter. I just don't think he can. I'm sorry.
Yeah. As Jason just pointed out there, Kaiser threw it deep, and Brandon Wimbush actually threw it deep. Like remember the pass to Chris Fink in the
Sure.
win over Michigan. But those guys had bigger arms, and I think
Absolutely.
that plays into it as well. Neither Book
Right.
nor Drew Pyne had the arm strength that those guys
And
have. And that's part of your decision on whether or not you're going to try to throw deep more often. Now, if you have a wide open guy, you should be throwing to him. But again, there were times that he didn't do that.
Listen, and I wish him nothing but the best. I hope that he is super successful and he quote unquote balls out at Arizona State. That's what somebody said. Okay, awesome. I hope he does for him because I think he's a good kid and I want him to have success and all of those different things. And so let's see what happens down there behind a line that's going to be completely pieced together and it's a complete rebuild at Arizona State.
Yep.
I don't think that Notre Dame is going to be competing with Arizona State for a playoff position. Just saying.
Well,
you never know.
It is the Pac-12.
It is the Pac-12, but
yeah,
still think that they're probably a middle of the road, if not the bottom echelon of the Pac-12.
Yeah. I think Ed said it just right. Tyler Buckner may never work out, but Drew Pyne was still not going to cut it. We could win 10 games with Drew, but we'd never win a title with Drew.
Absolutely. And I'm not saying that Tyler Buckner is going to be that guy. He may never work out, just as Ed 3 has to say there. I completely agree with that statement. Drew Pyne wasn't going to take you there.
In a year or two, like Pyne easily could have had a season like Jack Cohn had, right? But that was still not, to Ed's point, that was not a national championship quarterback that you were going to have, even if you clean some of that up in a couple of years.
Yep, agreed.
And then Wayne just says, my wife and I are both Arizona State alums. Can't believe I have to cheer for Drew Pyne again. Did Pyne graduate? No,
I don't think so.
He is not. He is not leaving Notre Dame with his degree. So that's That's kind of a downfall too. Is like you're here for what is it now? Is it 3 years or 2.5 years? And your Notre Dame dream and all that stuff, and now you're going to get an Arizona State degree instead.
That's rough. I'm
It is.
sorry. No offense to
Again,
the
I don't want to
Arizona
bag on
State
Arizona
alums.
State degrees, but
It
you're
just is what
comparing
it is.
Notre Dame and Arizona State. I mean, come on.
Yeah.
Okay, Vince. New subject.
Okay.
This is rapid fire.
We could talk for days on this.
Yes. Notre Dame handed out its season-ending Echoes Awards at the end of
Yes, I
last
saw
week.
that.
J.D. Bertrand, Defensive Player of the Year. Isaiah Foskey, Defensive Lineman of the Year. Prince Kollie, Special Teams Player of the Year. Michael Mayer got Offensive Player of the Year and MVP. Jarrett Patterson, Offensive Lineman of the Year. Bo Bauer got the Father Lance Iron Cross Award. Jack Kaiser got the Student Athlete Award. Josh Lugg got the Father Ted Man of the Year Award. Avery Davis, the Nick Petrosani Award, and a couple of other guys. Sam Asaf and Marty Auer got the Scout Team Player of the Year Award. So in terms of the awards for their play on the field, not these other awards that we don't really know what go into them. Any issue with them? What do you think about who got what awards for Notre Dame and potentially who didn't, depending on your opinion?
I think you could make a strong case for John Sott for Special Teams Player of the Year. I mean, I'm fine with Prince Kollie. Some of these awards, though, because John Sott's on his way out, obviously. He only had 1 year of eligibility, to my knowledge, and so he's on his way out. So some of these are like, hey, we see you. We're excited about your future. Here's an award.
Right.
I feel like maybe that's why Prince Kollie got the Special Teams Player of the Year award. Maybe not. I don't know. J.D. Bertrand getting Defensive Player of the Year. I don't know that I would have gone that route. I think that maybe that could have been a Benjamin Morrison potential award there. I understand it. I don't know that I agree with it, if that makes a lot of sense. As far as Isaiah Foskey, yep. Michael Mayer, yep. Patterson, sure. The other ones, the student athlete, Kaiser's a really good student, so I have no problem with that. That has nothing to do with your play on the field. And then the other ones, Bauer and Lugg and Davis, those are all kind of non-football-ish awards, right? And so I have no problem with those. I think, Man of the Year for Josh Lugg, I think that's accurate. I think there's not many guys that have, put as much on the line as he has over the last, 6 years. So totally fine with that. I'm fine with all of those other ones. So those would be the only ones I have an issue with the awards that they actually handed out.
I would be interested if Drew Pyne had stuck around.
Yes.
Like what he might have, would he have received Offensive Player of the Year and Michael Mayer got MVP in that case? You're not going to give one of these awards to a guy who bolted from the team.
Not even on the roster anymore.
Yeah.
Like he's not, he is an afterthought, rightfully so. He said he was leaving. I have no problem with that. I'm not going to steal your thunder here because you did write it in the show prep about, is there something missing like a next man in? I feel like that would have been the perfect.
Well, like they used to have next man in, and that's what I want, and then Pyne could have,
that would have been
as well.
Perfect for him. I would have had an issue with him as the Offensive Player of the Year, if I'm being honest with you.
I'm just saying, I'm not saying that he would have, but I wonder had he stuck around what he would have. Was really there's probably not another next man in type award to be had on this team, right? Because I'm thinking of other, potential next man in type guys. So
if you think about, the guys that went out with season-ending injuries, right? Avery Davis, did somebody step in for him specifically? No, not really. And then you had Tyler Buckner. He had a season-ending injury. Bo Bauer had a season-ending injury. There wasn't like one guy that stood in for those guys, but there was for Tyler Buckner. So I think next man in, I think they just deleted the award at that point. I think he was probably going to get it. They just deleted it because he's no longer part of the team.
Yeah, exactly. I like the Bertrand, I guess I was a little surprised Defensive Player of the Year. He ended up like his tackles weren't what they were last year. It'd be one thing if he had another 100 tackle season, but when you have a guy like Benjamin Morrison, especially as a freshman, have the kind of season that he had, again, I've got no problem with JD Bertrand and his leadership and what he does in the community and,
Right.
class and like all this different stuff. I mean, he's a great guy and, he's like a Notre Dame man. I've got no problem with all that. But I do feel like, his defensive coordinator likes him a lot. And I'm sure that played into this.
No doubt about that.
And
No.
it's not a bad thing that his defensive coordinator likes him a lot. But I just,
Sure.
again, like if you weigh it, maybe Isaiah Foskey would have been the other guy to, like in their eyes to even get defensive player of the year. But because you can give a defensive lineman of the year, he gets that. They do tend to spread these awards out a little
Yeah.
bit,
Yep.
so that like no one's going to get multiple awards. But the other one maybe that surprised me a little bit, and I understand again for how long he's been here, and he was a really good offensive lineman, that Patterson ends up with the offensive lineman of the year when you've got a guy like Alt who's on more
Right.
All-American teams than Jarrett Patterson.
It almost felt like a a legacy award, if you will, like a career award as opposed to, you know, a 1 year award, because there's going to be a lot of awards out there for Joe Alt and probably Fisher next year. I would think. I would hope. Well, we'll see.
Yeah. Fill in the blank, Vince. It's blank that Notre Dame women's basketball picked up a second win over a top 10 ranked team with Sunday's 63-52 win over number 6 Virginia Tech.
Is it wrong to say expected? Like when I watched Notre Dame women play, and I've watched a lot of their games, I expect them to win. When I flipped on the Virginia Tech game, they were down, and it was the first half, I believe, but they were down a decent chunk, right? And they kind of had to slowly claw their way back in. And then I went out and worked on the lights for a little while, and then I came back in, and they had a dominating lead down the stretch. I was like, okay, that's more like it. You know what I mean? Like, that's what I expect. That's what I anticipate right now. That's where this program has gotten itself back to. And it's exciting. Like, I know you get to see them on a regular basis. You get to travel with them and you see them more than I do. But for me as a fan, it's kind of where I expect Notre Dame basketball to be right now on the women's side.
Yeah, and that's kind of the line that I'm going down is where this program is right now. It is back on the rise with a bullet right now, and it's only number 5 in the rankings. Quote unquote, only a third straight week they're number 5, and it's because all 4 teams in front of them keep winning as well. You've got
Sure.
South Carolina, you've got Stanford, Ohio State, and Indiana, and 3 of those teams are unbeaten, and Stanford's only loss is to South Carolina by 2 points, so it's like Notre Dame's, just kind of sitting there nudging right now. Now Ohio State and Indiana are going to play each other at some point, but the bigger point is in Niele Ivy's first season, and I don't know if you remember this, like they would get to the fourth quarter, they'd be in there, and then things would unravel, and they couldn't win the fourth quarter. Last year they got a little bit better at that, and now this year, UConn made a big run back at Notre Dame in the third quarter. Notre Dame holds them off in the fourth quarter, pulls away for the victory. This game was tied at halftime. They started off shooting horribly, and they came out third quarter. Virginia Tech, Georgia Amore, their point guard starts bombing some three-pointers, and it's like, man, is this game going to roll back the other way? Here comes Olivia Miles in the fourth quarter. Olivia Miles and company. Huge game by her. Huge game by Lauren Ebo. Huge game by Maddie Westbeld. Huge game by Dara Mabry as well, because Dara Mabry, her game is not necessarily defense. She had the best plus minus on the floor playing on her old home floor. She transferred from Virginia Tech, and it's just such a different mindset this team has right now. And to pick up a second win over a top 10 team, you beaten UConn. Now you go on the road and you beat another top 10 team, and they're going to have more battles like this coming up this season because there are 2 other teams in the ACC ranked in the top 10 right now. So it's going to be a lot of fun to watch. They've got a different kind of resolve right now.
Yes.
It's really fun to see that kind of stuff when crunch time comes around.
And they play that way. They just play with like a confident chip on their shoulder. And that's what I like to watch, man. I like when a confident team hits the floor and they expect to win. And that's what this team is.
It's basketball, Tommy. It's basketball.
Tommy's not a fan. It's okay.
And Koff says, they'd be undefeated if they'd hit a layup in the Maryland game. You're right about that. They did miss some shots against Maryland, but Maryland beat UConn as well. Maryland's in the top 15 right now. So you got a 2-point loss on a buzzer beater to another really good team. So
right,
live and learn. I think they got better after
and they
that.
just beat the number 6 team in the country. So I mean, they're racking up top 5 wins, top 6 wins, top 10 wins.
And by the way, Virginia Tech center Elizabeth Kitley, the reigning ACC player of the year, she had 16 points and 20 rebounds in that game. And I said this afterwards. Michaela Mabry, the Irish assistant, was on with me afterwards. I said, if you would have told me she was going to have a line like that, I would never see a path to Notre Dame, winning this game. But there you were, because they did enough, especially late in the game with her offensively. They forced her out of the paint, didn't let her get easy shots. They limited the touches that she got and did it with defense.
Yep.
It's always a lot of fun when you can go on the road and there's all kinds of, like crowd around you and all that kind of stuff. And then they're very quiet at the end. They're leaving for the exits.
Love it.
That's right. All right, fill in the blank. It's blank that the NCAA has granted Oregon tight end Cam McCormick a 9th season of eligibility. After redshirting as a freshman in 2016, McCormick played in 2017 when he suffered 4 straight season-ending injuries from 2018 to 2021 after that.
Ridiculous. At some point, it's time to hang it up, all right? The whole you have 5 to play 4, that's what it needs to be. And you get one.
You're going to get almost twice that now.
You get 1 extra year for a season-ending injury. 1. How in the world this kid keeps getting more eligibility is absolutely beyond me. And it has nothing to do with the kid. I have no problem with the kid. I don't know the kid. That's fine. I'd keep asking for it too.
Yeah.
He could legitimately be a doctor when he's done. He's been in school for so long. 9 years.
9 years.
College. 9
years.
Wow. He could have 2.5 degrees by now. I was
going to say, you could get 3 degrees in 9 years. I mean,
if you could be a doctor, you could graduate from med school after 9 years. It would not be
a degree that you wouldn't have by the time 9 years is up. But I mean, like, you go from not even legal drinking age. He's going to be almost 30 by the time he's done if he sticks the whole thing out. I just wish that there were consistency, because there are men and women being denied a 6th year of eligibility. Correct. And this guy is getting 9. I don't know how the NCAA can justify this. No ill will against him. Like you said, get what you can get. If they're going to give it to you, take it and keep on going. But there are plenty of other people who have been in the same situation who have been denied even a 6th year, let alone a 7th, 8th, or 9th. And it's just typical NCAA BS. Give us some consistency at some point, NCAA, at some point.
Yes, correct.
Okay, so after the Colts blew a 33-0 lead to the Vikings, did Jeff Saturday blow his chance to become the Colts' full-time head coach, Vince?
I mean, we don't know what's going on behind the scenes, obviously. We don't know if he's been promised the head coaching job next year, regardless of how things go. But I'm sorry, you cannot blow a 33-point lead. Put a knee on it the rest of the game, for God's sakes. Like, how do you blow a 5-possession game? I'm sorry. I don't care who you're playing. You have a 33-point lead.
We were sitting here and, I flipped the game on and I couldn't see the score at the bottom because there was like some glare coming in from the window at the bottom of the screen. So I didn't see the score and it was just kind of on there. And my wife was in the room and she goes, "Weren't the Colts bad? Like, is this new head coach pretty good?" And I'm like, "What are you talking about?" It's 33-0. And I'm like, What? They're winning 33-0. And so then, I got to go to Blacksburg, and we flew out there. By the time we got to Blacksburg, it was all said and done. Everything had evaporated, and they end up losing the game. They had a chance. Jeff Saturday, I guess I should say, had a chance to put the Colts up by 2 scores with a little over 2.5 minutes to play. They've got the ball at the Vikings' 36-yard line. He could have kicked a field goal. Now, it would have been a relatively long 53-yard field goal, but their kicker had hit a 52-yarder earlier in the game. So it's right in his range still. It would have put him up by 11, but instead they go for it on 4th and 1. Quarterback sneak. They get stuffed, and afterwards he's like, "Oh, we had a good look. I feel good about it." This is the second time they have lost a game like this where he could have kicked a field goal, but he decided to go for it instead, and they get stuffed. And his only response is, "Oh, I feel like we had a good look. It was the right thing to do in the situation." He's proving that with every game that he has no business being in the NFL. The
Yeah.
Colts need to clear house. They need to get rid of everybody, on that coaching staff and just start over because it's not working. Saturday at times seems like maybe he's kind of reinvigorated things, but I mean, look at the fact they blew a 33-0 lead in this game. They gave up 33 points in the fourth quarter a couple of games ago to the Dallas Cowboys. It's like 33 is not their number. And by the way, I saw somebody tweet this. Frank Reich no longer has the greatest comeback in NFL history because the Colts fired him, and the guy they replaced him with blew an even bigger lead than Reich overcame in the 1993 playoffs against the Oilers.
Unbelievable. I saw that tweet as well. I was just like, full circle on that one.
Yep.
Woo.
Full circle. Full circle karma comes right back around. All right, Vince. Well, I think that's going to do it for tonight.
Is that it? Are we done?
We are.
All right. If you insist.
I think we covered quite a bit. I've been kind of keeping my eye on the chat. I didn't see any new questions pop in. So I think that's it. Of course, we've got the show tomorrow. Jesse and I will be here Wednesday. All kinds of special programming going on all day long on signing day. And then
it's going to be interesting. Yeah. Yep. So I believe you and I are going to have a show
we will
on Wednesday night. Well, we'll do our mailbag show, and I'm sure it'll be very recruiting, centrified. We'll do the best we can from a recruiting standpoint, but it'll be interesting.
Stay sane, stay as level-headed as you can. We'll see what happens then.
Yep.
All right. Well, thanks for stopping in today. Hit the like button on your way out if you haven't already. We appreciate you. Subscribe, rate, and review, all that great stuff as well. We will talk to you tomorrow on IB Nation Sports Talk.